Hey guys, welcome back. What I'm going to do today is talk to you about the combat reload. So what is the combat reload? What it basically means is that you have shot your magazine dry. So you should have a, like this, you should have empty magazine on the weapon, the bolt on the AR system should lock to the rear, and you can look inside the ejection port. It's a big clue, and you can see that there's no ammunition in there. It's a combat reload. So what we usually say is that the context of this is that you are in engagement with the enemy. So you are engaged with the enemy that has caused you to shoot your magazine dry. So therefore the priority at that point is to get a fresh magazine on the weapon. It's always a priority to get an actual live fresh magazine on the weapon, okay, rather than messing with an empty, okay? So that's the kind of the context in which we base this. I'm engaged in some kind of firefight. I am now empty. I got to get a fresh one on there and continue with that until that situation is over. Okay. So a few little kind of safety bit at the beginning of this. So what we're generally doing when we're moving around with the weapon in an operational environment is we have our trigger finger outside the trigger guard. It's going to be resting alongside of the weapon. We're going to have our safety is going to be on safe, and it's usually a good idea to have your thumb resting on top of it so it's ready to go, and it's going to be on safe until you have a sight picture on a positively identified enemy, a PID, positively identified threat, okay? At which point you're bringing the weapon up, you're putting the safety on fire, and you're getting ready to engage. Also what we're generally doing is we're having active muzzle awareness, and the patrol ready position like I'm in right now is a great position to move around in and to make sure that you have active muzzle awareness and you're not actually muzzling anybody as you move around. So these are the basic things that we're going to do. So in terms of a positive identified threat, okay, what I'm going to do is as I bring the weapon up, then I'm flicking it onto fire. And as I bring it back down again after engaging, I'm going to flick it back onto safe. Okay, so normally as it comes up, it's going onto fire, and as it comes down, it's coming onto safe. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply that to all combat reloads, and we're going to apply that to potential malfunctions as well. Okay, so what that means is once we get a combat reload, the weapon is firing, the weapon stops firing, which means we're going to bring it down. Then what we want to do is flick the safety on. Okay, for malfunctions, different topic. What we'll do is, because the safety won't always go on, is we'll attempt to put it on. We'll attempt to put the safety on if we can, okay? So that's not always what I've taught. So very briefly on that is that that's not the way I was taught growing up, okay? So I was taught that for a combat reload, you generally just, weapon is in the direction of the enemy. You don't need to put it on safe. In more complex environments, however, you do. So what this does, it just simplifies everything. It just makes it really simple. Because one of the issues that I see in training is that if guys are not putting their safety on to do a combat reload, but then in a more complex environment where they have to move, etc., 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 then they will have to put the safety on. And so what that does is cause a little bit of confusion when you get back up and then you forget that you got your safety on. So if you always safety off when you come up, safety back on when you come down, then you're just going to simplify everything and you're not going to make a mistake in terms of, why is my weapon not firing? It's because I got the safety on, okay? So that's a little bit of a change from what I've taught before, all right, going forwards. So that's kind of coming down through, now that's the new thing, coming down through the special operations community, etc. So we're going to do that because it makes a lot of sense, it simplifies stuff. So that's your basic operational safety, and that's how we're going to operate the safety when conducting these drills. The combat reload itself is really simple, and actually all of these things are simple. They're very simple, but they need to be repeated and trained so they become second nature. But why is that? It's not about being a cool guy on the flat range. What it is you've got to have your weapon manipulation down, because what's really important is your situational awareness, and also the awareness of your team and the tactical situation around you. So what tends to happen when people are not that good at weapon manipulation is they get sucked into their weapon. they're sucked into the weapon, trying to fix it, trying to get the weapon back in the fight. And they're a no-go. They're a no-go to team tactics, okay? So it's important to get good at weapon manipulation only in as much as it's part of the progression to becoming an effective team member, okay? That's what it's about. Okay, so as I mentioned here, we've got empty magazine, bolt lock to the rear. Now with the AR, you can actually feel the difference when you run empty. It's more of like a clunk because the bolt is not running forwards again, it's just locking to the rear. I tend to not teach that. If you get that impetus in your shoulder and you notice it, then that's great. I tend to not teach that because what we're also doing is we're training people for high stress, high adrenaline dump situations, so you just might not even notice that. Okay, so what we're going to go on is basically we're going to go on dead trigger. So I'm engaging, and I've got a dead trigger. And so what we're going to do at that point is there's three things you want to think about. And we don't know at this point whether it was a combat reload or some other malfunction with the weapon. So what we're going to do is three things. One, we're going to improve our position of cover. Two, we're going to yell stoppage, or whatever it is that you want to yell. People got all sorts of stuff they want to yell. Okay, whatever it is you want to yell to let your buddies know what's going on. And thirdly, you want to do the common first step. What's the common first step? Okay, it's looking at the ejection port, see what's going on. At which point, I can identify that I got combat reload. Real simple, real simple. But you've got to train it, and you've got to do it. Otherwise, it's not going to come naturally, all right? One situation where you're not going to improve your position of cover is if you're doing some kind of thing on the move. You could be changing on the move, etc. So apply common sense. When you get to that level, you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? But generally, if we're in a fire position, we're going to get into better cover while we deal with this. Okay, having looked into there, I realize it's not any other kind of malfunction. It is a combat reload. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. Now, given what I said earlier, that the priority is to get a fresh mag on the weapon, okay? What that means is that at this point, and this is what we generally teach, is at this point, this magazine is not important. A magazine is an expendable item. It's not worth your life, okay? So the easiest thing to do is just, if we cant the weapon this way to look inside the ejection port, then we can just cant it back the other way and hit the magazine release, and the mag's going to go down and fall off, okay? And what that does is it presents the magazine well, so that when I go get my fresh magazine in a beer can grip, I can then pull that onto the weapon to make sure it's correctly inserted. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to reach up with my thumb. I'm just going to reach up with my thumb, and I'm going to hit the bolt release catch. Ka-chunk, there it is. And then, if you remember, we put the safety on. So then all I need to do now is bring the weapon back up to fire, safety off, pull the trigger, and yell back in. And that's me back in the fight. Okay? However, there's always someone who wants to retain the magazine. Fine, okay? Let's look at ways of retaining the magazine, all right? Because it's the last magazine on Earth, all right? Or you're in the military and you got to, you can't lose that stuff. All right, so a couple of different ways of doing this. The classical way for a magazine reload with retention of the magazine, okay, would be to go through what I just said, improve my position of cover, yell stoppage, look inside, identify that I got a combat reload, okay, then simply cant the weapon, take the magazine, put it away in a dump pouch, then reach for the fresh magazine, place it on the weapon, thumb up, hit the bolt release catch, put it on fire, engage, back in. So that's the classic way for a magazine reload with retention. Okay, given that the priority is not the magazine, but the priority is to get the rounds back in the gun, another way of doing it, if you want to keep hold of that magazine, would be like a tactical reload, okay? So It's not a tactical reload because there's no rounds in this magazine. It's an empty magazine, so it's a combat reload. But if you do it like a tactical reload, okay, so here we go. So I'm shooting. I get a stoppage, look inside, okay, realize what I've got, go get my fresh magazine. Put my fresh magazine, this is one of the methods of doing it for a tactical reload, on the old magazine, hit the magazine release, fresh magazine in. Then I got a choice. I can then just hit that bolt release, and then I got to put that away, and then I'm back up, bang bang, back in. So that's 3 general methods that you can do a combat reload. Just drop the magazine and get the fresh magazine on. Urgent situation. Do a classic one, take the old magazine off, put it away, bring the new one out. Problem with that is there's a whole bunch of time where there's no rounds in the gun. Or you're desperate to keep hold of that magazine, so you bring the fresh one out, get it on the gun, then put the old one away. Obviously there's going to be a delay because you're putting that magazine away in terms of getting rounds back down at the enemy. All right? What I usually say is do the first method. If you just do the first method and you drop the mag off, okay, if it's an urgent situation, magazine's not worth your life, so just, hey, bug out, all right? If you get an opportunity to pick up the magazines, like you're in a support fire position for a little while, you go through 2 magazines, time to move, pick them up, and then move. Probably doing a tac mag at that point anyway, all right? Pick them up, collect them and move. So that's what I generally advise. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little bit of live fire thing, and I'm just going to go through very simple drills on the logs, on the little log pile behind me. The log pile behind me is going to be my cover. I'm going to 2 rounds per magazine. I'm just going to work through the various combat reloads as I described them. Let's go look at that. All right, guys, just going to go through the versions I just talked about, and the first one I'm going to show you is the drop in the magazine version. Let's give it a go. Stoppage! Okay, we'll run that one again. Stoppage! Okay, old school classic magazine retention. Okay, and then let's just look at one. We're doing like a tac mag, so we're going to bring the fresh mag to the gun. Stoppage! And just because, in my opinion, it's the first method that you should be doing, let's just do that again.